This is Water Elemental.
And this is Axis. And we are here to review the champions for the week.
Week 22, December 7th, 2010.
The champions we have available this week are Ezreal, Karthus, Kenan, Malphite, Master Yi, Morgana, Singed, Taric, Tristana, and Urgot. Starting off this week with Ezreal. Ezreal is a champion that has been nerfed into the ground. Oh my god, WTF, BBQ, dead. He's obliterated. Now, I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm not saying that because I hate Ezreal. But he genuinely went from a high skill cap champion to a very weak champion in the grand scheme of things. He was essentially a replacement for Corki in the very beginning, and as Corki got nerfed, Ezreal began to outshine, and he became the ranged DPS with the skill shot, champion of choice. After the nerfs and after the buffs, Corki has retaken his position over Ezreal. That said, Ezreal is in a place now where he has a niche, but he doesn't stand out particularly because he doesn't offer anything to the team. He doesn't have the blind like Corki does, and he doesn't have a lot of the armor shredding that he does. He does have the application of on-hits, and he has a somewhat strong lane phase.
He also has his across-the-map skill shot, which is pretty handy.
Of course, yes, that's very good for finishing off opponents. But being able to finish off opponents and being useful in a team fight are very different things, which is one of the reasons why Ezreal is frowned upon. His abilities depend on you having a very keen sense of perception, being able to predict enemy movement, and they can be rewarding in that case. But because of the nerfs, they aren't quite as rewarding as they once were. So if you're looking for a champion with a high skill cap and is very difficult to use, he's a champion that's good if you're looking for a challenge. So I definitely recommend him if you like being physical DPS, but you're bored of just right-clicking and being done. Ezreal's a great champion for that. Next we have Karthus. Karthus is my personally favorite mage. He's the only DPS mage out there. He can put out constant damage the whole time. He can get into team fights. He can outlast those team fights. He can be dead, and he can get those quad kills. He is one of my favorite mages. He's got a lot of utility because of the slow he has. Because not only is it a 7-second slow, which is quite significant, it is also an armor and magic resistance debuff, which is actually quite high, and a lot of people do not expect the amount of damage that they take as an increase because of that wall. Because with that wall, people who don't build properly can go into negative magic resist values. And with a Fiddlesticks or an Amumu, that can be deadly. His AoE and his skill shot are a hefty amount of damage, especially if your target is alone. That skill shot deals double damage to solo targets, which makes it very lethal if you're being ganked by a single champion. A lot of melee champions or ranged champions don't even expect you to be able to match their DPS output and even beat their DPS output. And finally, his ultimate is across the range, the QQ absolving destroyer of worlds, Requiem. Very powerful ability, hits every opponent on the map for a certain amount of damage. It is blocked, of course, by all of the spell shields, and it is mitigated by magic resistance, so communicate with your team appropriately before using it. It can be also used as an initiator or a way to prevent your team from getting into a team fight. It's useful, and it has intimidation factor, like a lot of Karthus' moves.
Red Beam of Death.
Yay! Next we have Kenan. Kenan is a champion that there's a lot of debate over how to play her. A lot of people like to play her AP, or him AP, rather. Sorry, Teemo fans. I mean, Kenan fans. Whatever. Yordles, they all look the same to me. Don't call me a racist. There are a lot of different ways to describe him. He can be AD with some attack speed or AP. A lot of people like AD because they can get a stun off and then they can pump out a lot of damage. A lot of people like AP because of the AoE potential he has. Either way, you're going to be mostly focusing on hitting with your skill shots and then lining up your second two abilities to get a good stun off, help your teammates, or just get some damage on them. So, Kenan got a couple of buffs. With his Lightning Rush, he got some extra magic resistant armor. So you can get in there and be somewhat safe, but don't think of it as a get-out-of-jail-free card. While it does give you increased movement speed, increased armor, it won't break you away from everything. So be careful and just be safe, because he's not exactly the most durable champion out there. The next champion we have is Malphite. He's a great champion. He's got one of the best initiators in the game. He's got a lot of durability. With his Iron Shield, it's a lot like Mordekaiser's shield, except it automatically recharges and doesn't recharge in combat, which is kind of a downer, but at the same time, going in with it is a lot better than having to pick it up along the way. He's got a lot of CC, a lot of soft CC, great knockups. He's a very solid champion, fun to play. He can put out a lot of damage that people aren't expecting, especially when built AP, but most people go for cooldown reduction, which is generally the way to go. He's a very strong champion with enough cooldown reduction because he can get into combat frequently and help your team get those kills.
Next we have Master Yi. He is a great starting melee champion if you're looking to start playing melee. He has a heal ability, he has a CC reduction, and he has a lot of across the map potential. He does have a lot of ad clearing, creep killing abilities. He is easy to build. He's one of those champions that pretty much any movement speed, critical strike, attack speed champion can do. But don't stack 8 Zeals. That's not going to help you. Try to diversify between what you need for the team. Because there can be some really good Yis and there can be some pretty bad ones.
But how can I get my Mercury trades without getting the 5 maladies? No, Master Yi can be very well. He's a lot like Ashe. He is easy to use, difficult to master. So there's a lot of potential for Yi if you play him appropriately. Next we have Morgana.
Morgana is a great caster. Very well, especially during this week with a lot of craziness we got on with Kenan and Karthus and Ezreal. She has a magic resistance shield. She has a passive spell vamp. She has a skill shot snare. And she has a AoE magic reduction bubble goop thing that you can put on the ground and it deals damage. Her ultimate is great, like we've always talked about. Slows enemies down while she's close by. The more you're near them, it can deal more damage, can stun them and deal more additional damage. It's great, especially since there's a lot of close combat characters this week like Singed and Taric and Kenan.
Be aware, though, Morgana's Black Shield and Ultimate were nerfed this week to be last slightly longer in their duration. So be aware of that if you're either a long-time Morgana player or a new one looking to recapture the old power. So just be aware of the diminished values on those abilities. Next we have Singed. Singed is an unusual tank in that he doesn't have a hard CC. But Singed has this particular talent where people see him and they immediately think, I want to kill him really, really badly. It's mostly because a lot of people like to chase. And Singed is pretty much the best kiter in the game. He has a slow, a big AoE slow, a throw over his shoulder, which pretty much works the opposite of any knockback you know about, especially with trusts. His main bread and butter ability is his poison trail. This is what he's most renowned for. Leaves a poison trail behind him. It's kind of a dot. It's kind of a damage. Deals damage as long as opponents are standing in it. Great for clearing creep waves. Does anyone know what that is? And of course, his ultimate insanity potion, the Great Tower Killer. It's great for getting away from champs. It's great for when you're locked in combat with someone who just won't give up.
Next we have Taric. Taric is a tank/healer this week. He is very complimenting to any great 5v5 team. He's really good in 3v3s too. He has a heal, as well as he reduces cooldown every time he deals damage. It's great for taking out towers. He also has a stun, a really great stun, and he also has an AoE shatter. Well, its passive gives increased armor. His ultimate increases damage depending on your team. It gives ability power, and it can give attack damage, as well as it gives a small amount of heal to you, so it's great for getting away with that little tiny bit of mana you have. But be careful though, it does run out really fast. And next we have Tristana. Tristana is a physical ranged carry. She has a built-in attack speed ability, as well as a increased range passive. She also has a dot, as well as she has a giant leap across the map. Her ultimate is a giant knockback that can deal damage. Be careful with it though. Please do not knock them away from where your team is. It's annoying, and it happens to me a lot.
Yes, be careful, because people hate people. And stuff.
Next we have Urgot. Urgot has an ability which takes 50% of all damage and reduces it to him. He has Jesus beams.
Oh, God. Let's not even go back to that review you did. That's just silly.
Oh, he was patched?
Urgot is a champion that excels in early game, and that's about it. Think of him as Garen, except terrible.
And no awesome catchphrase.
Yeah.
He reduces all damage that he deals, that is dealt to him by 25%. That's alright. He has his skill shot, he has an AoE damage over time, and he has his own personal bubble. He doesn't have much to offer as far as damage.
Yes, Urgot looks good on paper, but in-game, his damage isn't very high, mid-game, and he's just lackluster. He's supposed to be sort of a tanky DPS, and he just doesn't really excel in the DPS role, and doesn't really excel in the tank role.
His ult, once again, great on paper, but it's too short of a range. It's pretty much walking up to him and being like, here, now you stand where I am, and I'll go stand where you are. Then you stun for a few seconds, and then run away.
Yeah, if you're looking for a way to drag your enemies into combat with you, go with Blitzcrank. I mean, as much as I like to encourage use of different champions, he doesn't really do his role well. He doesn't put out very much damage past early game, and his ultimate is just lackluster.
When he first came out, he was fun, but other than that, he's just kind of... unless they buff him or kind of redo him a little bit, because I know they've redone champions before. So if they kind of redo him like they did with Kale or something, make him specific towards one end, and kind of make him a little bit better DPS or a little bit better of a tank, he'd be a better champion.
But we will see. Until then, if you guys have an Urgot build that works, we'd love to hear it. But until then, Urgot is terrible.
Even though he's a giant enemy crab.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Just hit his weak spot for massive damage, and you'll be fine, guys.
Hooray! That's all we have for champions this week, guys. Keep a lookout for next week, where we will be reviewing the champions for next week.
And stuff, right?
I hate stuff. Why would you bring that up here?
I'm sorry.
You'll never be sorry enough for what you did.
Never.